Welcome to the Mom It's My Life podcast. This episode features adults using adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
How's the feeling?
Satan, shut the fuck up.
What's up, you guys, and welcome back to Mom It's My Life. I'm joined here with my co-host Christopher.
Hello, guys.
Chris,
how's it going?
Who are we here with?
We are here with Alicia, the interview queen.
Hi,
I assume
Bronnie
she's
Chris.
down there for everyone.
Right.
What is up?
Thank you so much for having me. How are you both doing?
Yeah, we're doing
Good,
good. We're doing
good.
good. How are you
We're
finding quarantine? I mean, obviously you can't be with the bands and people who you interview, but I guess it might be a bit easier, interviewing people and on Skype.
Yeah, it's definitely been something to adjust to. One of the biggest things that kind of sucks about it is you don't have that family that you see on the road all of the time, and you guys would know this better than anybody. So I mean, like with me, it's the wrestling family at MLW. I really miss just seeing them every month for TV tapings and just traveling around, eating lots of different food. That kind of has been a real bummer. But the other side of it, kind of the silver lining in all of this, is nobody really has a lot to do. So a lot of people are free now and they can't really use that excuse of busy.
Yeah.
So I've had so many people on the show, and it's just been kind of, like I mentioned, a silver lining where I can have tons of people on and just have some fun.
Yeah.
Nice. Wicked. So talking about like your show, so do you want to explain that a little bit, what you do and like who you are kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. So I am the owner of a YouTube channel and website called Alicia Atout, or Ambi. When I first started it, I was about 16 or 17 years old, and it was called A Music Blog Yea, and it's because I only interviewed musicians at the time. And then about, I'd say a few years into it, I started also interviewing wrestlers. So I kind of pulled back the Ambi name and just changed it to my name, because people were starting to kind of just recognize my face in interviews, and oh, there's that girl who always interviews bands and wrestlers. So
Sweet.
and then I just changed it to Alicia Atout, and those two things have been a passion and hobby of mine for such a long time. So I was just kind of thrown into interviewing super randomly. I was seeing a band called Bombay Bicycle Club. We had this really crappy little recorder. Yeah, oh, so good, right? We had this really crappy little recorder, and my dad was like, why don't you ask Jack Stedman and Ed and Jamie a couple questions? And I was like, oh no, like shouldn't myself, like, oh God, what am I gonna do? And I did it, and people for some reason really liked it. And so I just kind of stuck with it. And next thing you know, I ended up not doing university and just was interviewing people for my job. So it happened very organically, but I'm glad it happened.
That's all. I feel like a lot of people in this whole industry, it happens organically, as in
you fall
it just
into
happens. Like, I mean, I never set out to be like, yeah, I'm going to be a singer. It just happened. I mean, Chris, same with you, I guess. It was just like, yeah, I love drumming. And...
I mean, I had drum lessons for like 13 years, so I kind of didn't fall into it, but
yeah,
I do know what you mean. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what were you going to study in university?
So the first things I applied to university for was just a lot of journalism courses, and I was actually accepted into 3 universities here in Toronto, and they were all the choices I wanted. But then I'd kind of get the curriculums back, and I thought to myself, I don't really want to do like newspaper reports or on scene, like depressing stuff. Honestly, like it just wasn't what I was feeling. I wanted to go to concerts and write about it and journal about that kind of stuff. So and then when it kind of occurred to me, you know what, you don't have to go to university for it. Sure, you won't have that outline of stuff to do. You can kind of learn as you go and, learn from mistakes and failures and keep growing. So my parents were super supportive. They're like, you know what, people seem to like what you're doing online. You've been doing it as a hobby. It wasn't a job in high school for like a year. They're like, just stick with it. Worst case, it all fails and you can go back to school and pick up where you left off. And I was like, okay, kind of shaken like a leaf, but okay.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
They really took a chance on me, and that's always been a very big driving force behind everything. Just their support has been incredible. So that really gave me a nice kick in the booty, and then I decided, all right, let's take this on full time. And so I've been doing it full time for about like 4 or 5 years now, going from music to wrestling, and
that's awesome.
It's been quite the journey. It's nuts.
And I think it is the best thing having your parents, back you and fully support you. And last time we chatted, I remember you saying that your dad has a big part in your career, as in helping with stuff, and as with mine as well. I guess our dads are quite similar then.
No, it's so wonderful when you know that your parents back what you do, because a lot of people don't have it that way. They're forced to go into something that they don't want or they're not passionate about. And the other thing too is I didn't want them sinking thousands and thousands of dollars of their money and my money into something I just wasn't passionate about, something that I knew would just be a waste of time to me. So when they said, yeah, you know what, like take the chance, see where it goes, I was just blown away by their support. And the thing is, like, I'm really close with my parents. I'm not one of those kids that was like urgent to move out or needed to get away. Like we still do family vacations together. We still go to concerts together and wrestling shows together. Like we're such a tight-knit group. Yeah, it's awesome. So I mean, if it weren't for them, I wouldn't like what I like and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I definitely owe so much of that to them. They're awesome.
That's great.
That's very cool. So like you said there that you'd go to like wrestling shows with them. Is that how you kind of got into wrestling? Was it through your parents, or was it like, again, one of these things that you just found yourself getting involved in?
Yeah, so I've been a wrestling fan since I was a kid because of my dad. He would watch it with all of his buddies. My mom would like sit me on the couch with them, and next thing you know, I was just completely captivated by all the craziness. So it was just, again, something that just kind of fell into my lap, and I never grew out of it. And then once music stuff started getting fairly big on the channel, and I had a lot of really big popular bands on there, my dad was the one who said, why don't you try interviewing wrestlers? Like, it's another passion of yours, just give it a go. And then that just took over. Like, I do more wrestling interviews than music ones now, because it was just one of those things that just completely grew, and I didn't realize how many opportunities were in the business for me. And yeah, it just got a little crazy, guys.
That's great. And I guess it all happens so organically. Because I've seen my uncle wait there, he said that he's watched your interviews, because I was like, oh yeah, I'm interviewing this person.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
He said he loved your interview with Chris Jericho.
Ooh, Chris
You
Jericho.
interviewed Chris Jericho.
He said it was your best interview that you've ever done.
Oh my god,
he was like, that is so sick. Sweet. You've done so him and his wife like watch your videos and all that, and they didn't even realize that we were doing interviews together. They were like, that's sick, she's doing really well.
That's so cute. But it's one of those crazy things, like you never know who's listening or who's watching or who knows you. Like I'm sure
that's the thing with social media. It's like,
oh yeah, you both know this. Like I've been at airports or in grocery stores, and someone will be looking at me funny, and I'm not trying to be egotistical, but I'm like, do they know who I am, or do I just have like some shit on my face, you know?
No,
and a lot of the time they come up and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this, or I recognize you, or oh, are you this girl? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So the fact that your family knows, like that's just the funniest thing.
I guess it's such a nice feeling, because it's like, it's working.
It's gratifying. We put so much hard work.
Is most of the time when people people give me that look, and like when you're out and about, normally it is because I have shit on my face. So it's nice to know that you're lucky enough to be noticed.
It's nice those little moments where your face is totally clean and they just know you.
And you're like, wow, they must know who I am.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's sick. So you've interviewed Chris Jericho. That's fucking awesome. Who's the coolest band you've interviewed, and who's the coolest wrestler you've interviewed?
That's so difficult. I've interviewed a lot of wrestlers that I've loved since growing up. So one of those was Chris Jericho. I've had him on my show 3 times now. And I actually got to work alongside him too in AEW when I did some work for them. So I mean, like that was a dream for me, working for the Bucks, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, and Chris Jericho. I was like, this is crazy.
That's so sick.
So that was a really cool moment for me. Mick Foley, I have loved since a kid. He's just a badass, hardcore legend. So being able to host for him, like I actually hosted shows for him and interviewed him.
Sick.
So that was super cool. So those are a couple for wrestling. And then for music, as far as people I've been able to either interview or meet through my job, like I've met Kiss through my job, which was the coolest thing ever.
Hell yeah.
That's so cool.
They're just like one of my favorite bands of all time. And there was this music festival out in Finland, and they hired me to come down and do social media and just do like an influencer campaign. Wow. And the headliners were Kiss, Slipknot, and Def Leppard. And I was like, oh my God. Like you're kidding, right? So they literally,
so cool.
It was amazing. And they flew me out, and I got to meet Kiss in like this private meet and greet. And it was just one of those moments where you take a step back and you're like, whoa, my job brought me here. Like, how is this even possible? So that was really cool. And people I've interviewed in music, I always bring up like Metallica and Motorhead, because they're 2 of the coolest names, hands down, not just in metal, but just in pop culture and in music.
In general.
In the business.
Yeah.
Right. So
their song Fuel is one of my favorite songs ever.
I was actually listening. It was weird. I have a playlist. Oh, I got tangled somehow. How did that happen? I have a playlist with both of those bands in it, just because sometimes I reminisce, just like, oh yeah, that was a fun interview.
Live the moment.
Yeah, totally.
That's
Just
so
relive
cool.
it. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Thank
So
you.
you'd say like they were the best ones for you personally?
They're definitely the ones that stand out just in terms of names. For me, my music taste is all over the place. So one day I'll be like full on 80s and then Philly soul and then metal. Like I'm just crazy everywhere. But as far as things that actually meant a lot to me, I'm a huge fan of a lot of like indie British pop. So like the Kooks, Snow and the Whale, Bombay, Maximo Park, Mystery Jets.
A special place in my heart for Noah and the Whale. Like, I don't know why, but there just always has been. They're so good.
I've cried way many times to those records. It's just I love them. But like Mystery Jets, I love. They're Maccabees. Oh, they're just so many great bands from over there, right? R.I.P. guys.
It's weird to think like, yeah, I know. It's weird to think that like, it's, I don't know, like from a perspective. So you say, wait, you're from Canada?
Yes.
So like I don't know. I just find it really weird. It's like you'd be like, "Oh, there's so many great bands from over in the UK," and we're like, "Is there?" Like thinking about it, like you've got like all these massive names, and like unless you really like the genre of music, there aren't that many names from over here because the genre is quite tight. Like there's not massively loads of bands that come out of it.
No, a lot of people bring that up. They're like, how do you even know these bands? Like, even though they're big over there and they'll headline festivals over there, they'll come here and play to like 400 or 500 people if they're lucky. Like, not all of the ones I mentioned, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
So my dad actually, when I was growing up, he'd always download, like not the new Virgin radio, because now it's like all pop hits, but growing up, Virgin in the UK was like all of those indie bands and like when the Strokes were not known and like all of those types of groups. So he would literally download all these playlists and my sister and I would just go gung-ho. So we just grew up on like everything from across the pond. So that's like really my favorite genre is all that kind of music. Yeah.
That's sweet.
That's
and
so cool.
we've seen interviews with you on YouTube of interviewing people like Dua Lipa, Bring Me, 21 Pilots. How's that been for you?
Yeah, it's super cool when you get those big names on, because not only does it feel like a personal achievement when you're like, oh, this person's on the radio like every 3 songs. It's also cool just because fans love that kind of stuff. And I was really lucky to get a lot of these artists when they were like right about to break or right after they broke. Like they had that first big single that went viral, or they were just about to do a huge tour with someone else that was massive. So I really got people at great times, or people were just awesome and gave me a chance, because all those interviews you mentioned were from a few years ago, before I was even like, you know, had really honed my craft and become like the interview queen or whatever. So it was just one of those things where I look back now and it's an awesome introduction for people, because you'll Google like Dua Lipa interview and mine's one of the first ones to come up.
That's
because
great.
it was from so long ago. And it was one of the first ones she did that got a lot of traction. So it's awesome that people can come over, see that, and then be like, oh, she interviews all these other people, and then they kind of dive into the archives and see what I'm all about.
Because I remember years ago, cool. I always like to watch bands interviews, because I always like to pick out, you know, little facts that they do or how they write their songs. And I came across so many of your interviews, like the one with
Really?
Waterbox.
That's awesome. Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was sick. Oh God,
was that the one on the red carpet where they're all in?
They're in the trees.
Dressed as trees. Yeah. I saw that and I was like, that's really, really weird. But it's one of those things. It's like you see that and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to check out more of her stuff. It's almost like you said with like the whole Dua Lipa thing. If you've got a big name on it, it's like it's almost secured your like clickbait in a way, which is great.
Oh, for sure. And one thing I've noticed that's really, really really helped is when you interview someone like that of a name like a Metallica, and then you want someone who's like a third of the size of Metallica, and you can kind of reach out to them and be like, hey, I've interviewed so and so and so and so, and you name drop people. It's like with you guys, if you're trying to get a tour, you kind of mention like, oh, we've been on the road with, and then who knows what it can lead to. But it puts you in that viewpoint for people.
Because we've done gigs like we supported Little Mix, so it's been so much easier being like, oh yeah, we support Little Mix, and people are like,
that's huge.
I'll have you on the tour. So it is good. And then obviously you've got the music side with us, and then you have your personality side, which is amazing. So you were so easy to No, honestly, like you're so easy to talk to, and when you were interviewing me, it was just really easy. So I feel like bands can be like, oh my god, she's great, yeah, do an interview. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of just word of mouth as well in this industry, isn't it?
It definitely is. And it's so nice to hear from different people, because sometimes you take a look back and I just think like I'm just some girl from like a small city in Canada. And, how did people even know my name? Like how is that even a thing? So whenever you hear things like that, or you get a band approach you and they're like, hey, my friend from so-and-so, a band I've been listening to since I was like a kid or whatever, recommended we do something, I just freak out. Like I remember
so cool.
there was this one summer where I interviewed Taking Back Sunday, The Used, Gerard Way from My Chem. Like there were just all these bands, because other than like the English music, the indie pop stuff I mentioned, like my other love is just like 2000s emo, like
hell
hardcore. Yeah. You have no idea. Like
preach it.
Oh, I had the haircut. I looked like a little Hayley Williams growing up. Like, I just loved it.
Nice.
Everyone did, right?
Ooh, have you ever interviewed Hayley Williams?
No, it's really sad.
One day you will.
I feel like I had a chance. She was supposed to have a tour in June, but of course with like the pandemic, everything's canceled for tours. And I feel like I just had this really good feeling like I would have got it. But eventually, she's on my list. That like
you will.
You
can't not.
Oh, one day.
So in fact,
what's like?
Oh yeah, sorry, Christopher, you go.
So I was just gonna say, like, you were talking about like being on the road and stuff, and like obviously like flying out to like interview bands and stuff. Where's the coolest place you think that your job has taken you?
Oh, that's so tricky. So for the last few months, I've been in the States like every single weekend in different places, and that's just super fun for me. I know it's not so as far. Like I am in Canada, and it's literally right below, but it's just an adventure. I feel it's so different than up here. So I love doing pretty much anything in North America. But as far as the coolest spots, I was flown out to do stuff in Amsterdam and then Finland for my job as an influencer. And it was literally like, we have a huge music, like the Kiss thing I mentioned. It was, we have a huge music festival, come on down, take pictures, have fun, post stuff online, and there you have it. Like everything's covered, hotel, flight, everything. You just have a good time. And I was like, how is this?
Yes.
Like,
so cool.
Pinch me. So that was cool. Back in 2017, BMW reached out to me. And they did a huge collaboration with Coachella. So I actually got flown to LA for a week to cover Coachella, interview bands, and drive around in like a really badass BMW through
hell yeah.
Through the not mountains, but like through the hills of California. And it was just, we had this huge villa that we stayed in, and they just like wined and dined us. And
that's awesome.
It was so cool. And I was 21 when that happened.
Wow.
So it felt like one of those surreal things. It was the first trip I ever took alone, the first time I ever went on a plane alone. It was like a big grown-up moment for me, you know?
Yeah.
So
that's like right in the really deep end as well. Oh wow.
Yeah, because I was like, holy shit, BMW want to work with me? Like, I read the email 10 times before replying, like, is this a scam? But no, it was awesome.
That's so cool. And so how did that all happen? Was that literally them seeing your YouTube videos and wanting to collab with that?
Yeah, so they had an agency up here in Toronto who were handling the campaign, and that agency was really familiar with all of the music interviews that I had done. Well, not all, but some of the music interviews I did. So they just reached out saying, hey, we have this opportunity. We're looking for influencers to come in and do this. And I was like, yeah, 100%. And
I'll take it.
What was really amazing to me is the other influencers I was with, they were from, most of them were from Germany and Costa Rica, and they were these beautiful models who had like 500,000 followers or like 100K. And back then, in like, I don't know, 3 years back, I was nowhere near like the following I have now. So I was just surrounded by these people who they're all like late 20s, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like they chose me to be with these people, like what is going on? So it also was inspiring and like a kick in the ass to be like, okay, like you can get to that level, and then hopefully more opportunities come around. And you know, every day I'm just can never be content. Every day I'm working to get like bigger and bigger and better and better.
That's great.
Nice.
That's so good. And so you are the official TV host for the Major League Wrestling, which airs every Saturday night, everybody. Wait, what time is it? 9 p.m. EST.
You got it. Look at you.
Oh, yeah.
Hot shot.
All the research. So guys, make sure you go watch. So tell us more about that.
Yes, so MLW Major League Wrestling, our promotion where we primarily run in the States, but we actually just had a massive show in Tijuana, Mexico in front of 5,000 people. So company is definitely on the rise. our roster is full of some of the hottest agents on the indies. They're just absolutely wonderful. And then once you get picked up by MLW, it's kind of cool because like it has an indie vibe, but you're signed at the same time. So it's like you're independent, but you're also not. Like it's super cool because you can still do whatever else you want. It's awesome. So it's just great matches, tons of fun. I have such a blast like being in ring with these guys, just doing promos, getting made fun of because that's like not all of them are very nice. But it's just so fun, and you every month you're in a different city. So I think we had a stretch where it was like we did New York, Philadelphia, we had Tijuana, we were in Dallas, and you're there for like 3-4 days at a time with all your friends. Once you're done work, you get to walk around, explore the city, eat a ton of food, which is like my favorite part. So yeah, it's an amazing opportunity, and it's the first company I've signed with when it comes to professional wrestling. So yeah, it's super cool.
Oh, that's awesome. And we're super happy for you for getting involved with that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And like, as someone who I used to watch wrestling quite a lot when I was younger, and I've kind of like come out of it. But like since I've kind of like got back into it a little bit, I've been way more appreciative of like all like the tiers below professional wrestling, like
it's not just WWE.
It's not just WWE. Yeah. It's like I got into like NXT and then like below that, and I like learning all like the different levels and stuff, and I've got like a far greater appreciation for like the indie circuits of wrestling that goes around now, and it's actually some of it is a lot better, I'd say.
Yeah,
it's a lot more funny. Say that.
I fell in love with it. Like I remember going to my first indie show, and I'll be honest, like I was a little apprehensive because you hear all these things about like certain indie shows just being a complete cluster and like a shit show, and it has the stigma once you're really naive and don't know anything about it. So I went to my first show, and it was a tournament, and I was just like, oh my god, this is like, I was cheering like 2 matches in, like you already know people's names, the entrance music hits, and you're just so into it. It's good fun. Everyone's there to have a good time. The wrestling is awesome. There's a lot more high flying and like I don't want to say dangerous stuff, but I mean it's true. Like people are putting their lives on the line out there, and I just remember seeing like one match was just flips nonstop, and I'm like, yeah, you see that in WWE for sure, but not like this close, Like I was like right there in the action.
It's definitely more intimate.
Oh, it's so cool. Much more. So it's awesome. I just fell in love with it tenfold.
Oh, awesome. In fact, Chris, when we played in Birmingham 02...
I was about to say...
Who was it?
So, we played Birmingham 02, and it was the like the NXT International Series they were doing.
Okay,
and, they were playing in because there's 3 venues in the O2 in Birmingham, and we were playing in the second one, but they were playing in the first one, and our green room walks up around the top of the arena.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
we were like... peered open the curtain, and we were like watching the NXT that was going on.
It was
and
sick.
That was really, really cool.
And because their fans were lining up and our fans were lining up, and they were chanting both of our names like in the same crowd. They were like, yeah. And
so
then they tweeted us saying, oh, yo, come backstage and all that. And we were literally in the middle of a meet and greet, and then we had to go.
Yeah.
Because we were playing somewhere the next day, and we had to be there. And it was literally when we were doing the gig, they were like, oh, come see the show. And we're like, oh, we're literally on stage. But
yeah. That's one thing that sucks about being in the UK. And like, if you're really into wrestling, like there's a couple of fans who are like big into it. And like they only get a few dates a year. Which is like, it's a bit like, and I think that's why for like someone like myself, not being able to get into like the wrestling scene as much, I guess, because it's not as obvious to people over here. Yeah. And I think like it used to be on TV loads, but I know BT have just signed a new deal with WWE, and I'm really excited about it.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's cool. So, it's neat though that you like rediscovered this passion for it, because a lot of people, like it happened with me. I grew up on it, and then I loved Attitude Era, and then there were a couple years where I just like completely stopped watching it. And it wasn't because it had sucked, but it did change a little bit. And I just stopped watching it. And then I remember it was like I maybe took a break for like 2-3 years from watching wrestling, and then something happened again. I don't even remember what it was, but it like drew me back in. And then since then, I just haven't stopped at all. So it's cool that you've refound that love for it.
Yeah, it is. And like I found like, because my all-time like favorite wrestlers were like Rey Mysterio, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, like all of those guys, and like the Hardy brothers. And then obviously when they came back at WrestleMania, I was like, this is it. I'm back involved. Like, I love it
So
again.
that's the thing too. That's like been the most surreal thing for me, is watching people on TV when I was like 4 or 5, and then being face to face with them, either having them on my show or hosting shows for them. Like, back in, oh gosh, when was it? Back in March, I met Matt Hardy from the Hardy Boys, and I got to interview him for my show, and it just blew my mind, because the Hardy Boys were one of my favorite,
cool.
they were my favorite tag team growing up. And then
100%.
in that same day, I got to interview Lita, who was a part of their factions. It was just one of those takeaways where you're like, oh my gosh, I was literally on my couch as a child watching you, and now like you're a peer of mine, you know? It's crazy.
That's
You're
awesome.
pinching yourself. That's
I
cool.
feel, I mean, I'm not really into all that. I need to get into it though. But I feel like it's very like getting into a band as a kid, you know, going a bit quiet on them, and then kind of getting back into their music and you know, realizing the meaning of the song and all that. I feel like it's kind of like that with
it definitely ages well. It's like maybe some of the magic has disappeared from when you were a kid, but I do feel like it's still got so much to it.
I guess as well, it's very nostalgic for you guys.
Totally. It's like when there's a band you loved growing up, and then you get to see them on their like reunion tour, or when they play an album in full. Like, oh my god, I remember every song.
It's like when
That's
Gold
awesome.
Dust came back, and I was like, yes.
Oh my gosh. It's cool. You're mentioning so many people that like I've worked with, and it just, I don't know. It's never one of those things where it's like a humble brag by any means, but like it just puts things into perspective, where you're like, holy shit, like you've worked so hard for stuff and for so long, and we're all still so young in the reality of it. And so when you think back, like you just don't realize until you hear people name names and how much they love them, where you're like, whoa, I actually have a connection to this person. Like, it's just
totally.
It's nuts.
And all that hard work you put in, you know, throughout the years, you'll probably think you get so many people who are like, oh god, it's so hard, but then it's kind of like you want to tell yourself 5 years ago, keep going, because oh my god, you're gonna get to interview this person, this person, this person. You're gonna get to play with this band, this band, this band, and it's kind of like, even when what we're doing now, it's great, but it's like what would we tell ourselves in 5 years' time? Do you know what I mean? And it's like it's quite crazy how literally anything can change. Ooh,
no,
that's insane.
Oh,
we got some extra minutes. Hell yeah!
Lovely. No longer has a limit. Look at us go.
So if you could choose between like doing music or wrestling, if you had to choose between the two, which would you choose?
It's such a hard question, because honestly,
from like an interviewing point of view, not like a hosting point of view.
So when it comes to interviewing, I'd probably have to choose the wrestling, simply because the characters are larger than life. I'm sure you know this too, because you've toured with so many bands. Like it's kind of hit and miss pending personalities, because
totally,
it's true. And it's not that it isn't that way in wrestling, but when it comes to wrestling, it is honestly like more, we're all dressing up in our underwear fighting each other, like we know that this is goofy and we're here to have fun, you know what I mean? Like, of course it's a serious sport, no doubt, but everyone has a mindset like we're here to have fun. So when I do interviews with wrestlers, they're always a good time, they're always ridiculous, and sometimes it just shocks me, whereas sometimes when it comes to musicians, like I can have an amazing interview like I did with you, and I just connect, and then other times people just want to plug the music, or they just want to give me one word answers, because like you know, it is more in music, unfortunately, but like it's hard to choose.
Do you feel like there's less of an ego in wrestling when it comes to interviewing and just having general chit chat without a camera or microphone?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know why that is, because it's, both industries are so DIY until you are picked up by a label or by a promotion. And even when you are picked up, like a lot of it is still a very DIY mentality. So I don't know. I really don't know why it is. Again, I don't know if it's because maybe wrestlers take themselves less seriously, because they kind of take a step back. And I've had a lot of people tell me, like, we're literally in trunks, oily and wet, wrestling other dudes. Like, I've had people tell me that in wrestling. So they're like, we can't take ourselves seriously. Look at us. We shave our chest. We do all this, you know? So I just think maybe they already have the mentality to come in and be like, okay, we know we're here just for a good time. Whereas there are a lot of egos in music. I'm not just saying when it comes to musicians. I'm talking about publicists to managers. Everyone thinks they're hot shit. You know?
As soon as you get one
big
good
time.
contact, if someone's like, yeah, I know this person, it's like they'll literally cannot hold it against you, but try and play you as in like, well, yeah, you're gonna have to sign to me. It's like, no,
totally.
because there's so many bands that we go on tour with, and they like Neck Deep, for example, the nicest people,
awesome people
ever. Literally, Ben, he gave us his email. He was like, right, let's email, if you ever need any advice. And that's great. Whereas you'll get people way lower down in the whole crowd and, popularity perspective. And they'll literally be like, cool, we're playing a show with you. All right, see ya, bye. And it's literally just like...
People just think they're hot shit.
Yeah. We're all here for the same
hilarious.
thing, to play music for to fans and get fans and, get bigger. And especially in the whole pop punk scene, we're all little fish in a very big pond. No matter how... In fact, when you think of us to Neck Deep, that's a big step. But when you think of Neck Deep to Beyonce, that's a fucking massive step. So
right.
just like, I don't get why people have egos. It's stupid. And I feel like the whole wrestling world feels very, everyone's a family member. Everyone's,
It is that way, and I don't know if it's because it is a bit more broken down in music. Like, you'll have your band that's your family, and then you'll have like little cousins places, or like bands that you befriend, but then you have like those douchebag uncles that come in and you're like, oh, I don't want to see you. But whereas in like wrestling, it's not just like 4 people. Our locker room has like 20 to 30 people in it, and you all kind of have to... I swear, there's been this fluff in here the whole time. That's driving me crazy, guys. I think I just got rid of it. But it's like you don't really have a choice but to kind of befriend these 30 people, because otherwise you're going to be that odd man out that either doesn't have the friendships or that's looked at like, just chill out. Like no one really judges, and that's one of the things that shocked me the most in MLW. Like, I'll walk into a room full of musicians, and you can tell right away, like they kind of like scope you out, look you up and down, and they're like,
it's like a high school. It's like a high school lunchroom.
Totally. And then I'll walk into the locker room, like an MLW, and everyone either like knew who I was before, or they had some kind of like respect right away. And it was just awesome. Like,
that's
I
great.
didn't need that. Like, by no means was it something I expected, but they just gave it to me anyways. And
it
I
gives
really
you more
appreciated
confidence
that.
to chat to people and to feel yourself.
Thank you for listening to the Mom It's My Life podcast. Bronnie and Pete are hobberknockers who forgot to end the podcast, so now I am here. I don't get paid enough for this job, man. Fuck.